Welcome to the U.S. Commercial Service and Austrade webinar on navigating higher education and EdTech in Australia. My name is Amy Friedman, and I'm a Senior International Trade Specialist with the U.S. Commercial Service Cleveland office, and I also serve as EdTech subsector lead for our global education team. And we're very pleased to promote Australia as a destination for U.S. EdTech companies. In today's program, we will have speakers from Austrade, the Council of Australasian University Directors of Information Technology, the Australasian Council on Open Distance and E-Learning, and our Commercial Service Office in Australia to speak about the trends, opportunities, and landscape that the Australia education system has in terms of EdTech procurement. Now I'm pleased to present Michael Sankey, who's the president of the Australasian Council on Open Distance and E-Learning. Professor Sankey.
Thank you, Amy, and pleasure to be with you this morning or this evening in your particular case. The Australasian Council Open Distance and E-Learning, similar to CORDIT, is a representative body, so it is the directors of technology-enhanced learning, potentially. That is, technology-enhanced learning being that nexus between technology and pedagogy. And so I first would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land in which I'm residing here, which is in the south side of Brisbane in Australia there. What we've seen over recent years is the digital ecologies that we're using are changing because the way we want to teach is changing. We're seeing a much greater emphasis on things like active, authentic and collaborative modes of teaching. And of course, this has been emphasised very strongly through the recent COVID crisis. And so we're always looking for those new tools to help us do these new tasks online in better ways. But the reason we adopt these tools is not because they're nice, funky tools. It's because they actually have a sound pedagogical foundation. And so any vendor trying to get into the Australian university sector needs to be very clear about the pedagogical foundation or the reason a teacher would want to use their tool that would give them an advantage to what they've previously been doing. So what I'd like to do is just look at some of the current trends that are happening in the sector, particularly around technology-enhanced learning. We see that across Australia, we have Blackboard as being the main LMS being used at this point, followed by Moodle, Canvas coming a third, and Desire to Learn a distant fourth. There are going to be some changes over the next 12 months, we see, and they will be a slight shift towards Canvas as being the preferred LMS, although many in the sector are saying now Canvas is becoming a little bit more problematic and it's becoming a little bit overcomplicated. So we're seeing some shifts in the LMS space happening at the moment. We also have this notion in Australia of technology-enhanced learning environment, or this ecology of systems, which is made up in the centre part here as the student curriculum management system, which is the PeopleSoft Student One, whatever system that might be. At the top of the apex there, we have a learning management system. Working around to the right, at about 2 o'clock there, we have what we call productivity and communication tools. And we've really seen the rise of tools like Office 365 Teams, Slack, and those type of collaborative tools make a real insurgence into the market over the last little while. Just for example, my own university, Griffith University, last year we had 600 courses or units using Microsoft Teams as the primary platform for conducting learning and teaching. The Blackboard is still our primary LMS, but Microsoft Teams has become a far greater thing within our university. We then have content management systems, of course, for our content, lecture capture systems and media streaming, e-portfolio and evidence rendering tools, virtual conferencing systems similar to this one, that all sit within what we would call our core tools. Then around that outside, we have up the top right there the social media platforms that are used, the web apps and educational tools, open education resources becoming a really big thing, third-party content streaming services, professional identity platforms like LinkedIn, etc., and then academic integrity tools and writing assistance tools and things like that. So they're probably the main areas, and across all those things, of course, is this notion of data, being able to consume that data to get an accurate understanding of what our students are doing. In this particular, in Blackboard is our learning management system at Griffith, and we, similar to that diagram illustrates, have a range of other tools that we use across our ecology to stimulate and to encourage students to be far more active and collaborative in what they're doing. And we, importantly, in this particular diagram, is those overlaps of those black boxes in the middle that overlap across Office 365 and Blackboard, and how the notion of LTI and XAPI are becoming so important in relation to the way in which universities consume their data. What we are seeing, and I've mentioned already this, the rise of things like productivity tools, is that Blackboard has been, for a great extent, used in our Queensland state schools, for example, but so is Office 365. But Blackboard, up to this point, or LMS, I should say, up to this point, has provided a very good scaffolding tool for our students, particularly in their first years. But what we do see is we want to actually prepare students for the workforce. And that's been mentioned a couple of times already. There's a strong focus within Australia preparing graduates as work ready. And so over the period of time, we see that the tools like Office 365 and Slack, those productivity tools, play a much greater role in what happens in learning and teaching than does the LMS. And so we see over a period of time through postgrad and work, those productivity tools really taking a much greater place in this ecology, along with other workplace technologies, of course. If you're an engineer, it's CAD, or if you're an accountant, it's MYOB, things like that. We do see that there's not many LMSs used in the workplace. And so it's how we are seeing a lot of these tools interfacing with things like Office 365 as being a fundamental way forward. We did a survey just 2 weeks ago in terms of who's returning to lectures in Australia. So there's 43 institutions, universities, public universities responded to this. Only 32% or 14 will be returning to on-campus lectures this year. So that is, a range of other universities are doing a whole lot of different things other than returning to lectures. And here we go with this notion of collaborative, authentic type learning. We see that the main driver for this is not the fact of people sitting in the room, it's actually pedagogical reasons. Why? Because we don't see that the 2-hour, 3-hour lecture is a great way to transmit information anymore. Our students are different to what they were when I was at university, and probably when you were at university too. So there are very sound pedagogical reasons why we are making this shift. It's not just because of COVID. And so you see in this middle section here, where there are 20 responses, that there are many reasons for this. The question was sound pedagogy the reason, or was there other reasons? And there are many reasons for making that shift. We also did a survey late last year or mid last year on what's happening with invigilation softwares and online assessment. As you know, we had to throw all our assessment online very quickly, and companies like ProctorU, etc., became very popular very quickly. But in Australia, we only found about half our universities use some kind of online proctoring tool. And I think we'll find that it'll be even less than that using it this year. And so there are alternatives that universities are adopting to our online assessment. Of course, online assessment and integrity is particularly important. We see these other tools being used for online assessment. For the proctoring in ProctorU, you see there as being that. Zoom was used heavily, Examity, and other tools that we use quite heavily in that online proctoring space. Of course, many people just went to some traditional tools, Turnitin as being a way in which to just more around that traditional assignment type base instead of using exams. We also have done a study recently on microcredentials in Australia, in the Australasian sector. And that is a huge growth area for us, and the way in which we credential higher education and make that portable We see about half the institutions in Australia and New Zealand have some kind of policy in relation to this so far, so half haven't. We see that only a smaller amount, only 32%, have some kind of mapped matrix across what qualifications they will credential and how they'll credential them. So that's an important growth area, and we'll see that change significantly over the next 12 months. And we do see there's a status of adoption where most of those universities, or almost half the universities, would see themselves in that development phase of where they're going with micro-credentials, either in that development phase or early development phase. So you see there that 70, 80, almost 80% of universities would be in that phase. Probably 3 or 4 universities would be seen in Australia as being mature in that space. And we see that those courses, the units that are being micro-credentialed, are around postgrad units, undergraduate units, and particularly short courses in the majority of cases. Now, I'm not going to, I believe these slides can be made available to you, and I'm not going to go into detail around this because it is around that pedagogy side. But what we see is that the reason we adopt tools is not because of the niftiness or the uniqueness of the technology itself. It's how the underlying pedagogies need to match what we're doing. And so, particularly around active learning, if you're thinking about creating new things, we're thinking about active discussions, live debates, problem solving, case-based learning, simulations, role play, teacher, peer teaching. Peer teaching is a big thing now, and teaching projects, team projects. In collaborative learning, we're looking at peer modelling, being able to do active scavenger hunts and informal debates and formal debates, pass the problem type arrangements, and being able to form groups, create and doing creative activities within groups. If we're looking at authentic learning, we might be setting out problems that are ill-defined and looking for a sustained investigation of a particular topic and building up information to create activities for students that they can contribute to and build up a body of information. Allowing multiple sources and perspectives. Reflection is a big thing. An e-portfolio in Australia is quite a big thing, but that notion of being able to reflect and being able to look at other disciplines. So if I'm an engineer, I need to put on the accountant's hat for a while to understand how the accountant would see what I'm doing and put it through that lens. So being able to offer different lenses across the different topics that we're studying. And of course, assessment and things like that need to be integrated. So that's where we come back to that notion, not just of integration to our systems, but integrated in towards our work-based learning, work-integrated learning activities. That notion of LTI, XAPI, really important in terms of the open caliper stand. All those things are really important in terms of making the case back to our institutions. It needs to be worked within that ecology. I have written an article on this called Putting the Pedagogy Course in Front of the Technology Cart, which is available there for you. And you will, if you get the slides, we'll have that link there. I think that will explain what I'm trying to say very quickly in a nice way for you. I'm going to leave it there and open up to questions because I know that kind of talk does open up questions.
Thank you very much, Michael. That was a really interesting presentation. And to touch on your point, yes, we will be sending out the slides as a PDF to all registrants. And if you do have questions, please feel free to enter them into the Q&A section or chat section on the WebEx platform.